afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd, and you are not, because you're here at the October Special Edition 2016 PracticeMaster Virtual User Group Meeting. Why Special Edition? Oh, we have so many reasons today. First off, it's Halloween. Patty, unmute your microphone. We're going to do that joke again. What is it? Why doesn't the mummy have any friends?
Because he's too wrapped up in himself, Paul.
She's smiling when she says that, even though we've gone through this many times already. That's the only Halloween joke we know. But it's special for a lot of other reasons. Not just because you're here with us, but because, well, first off, Mary Jo's usually sitting right here with me, and she's not. And when we found out that her husband was really sick and she had to stay home and take care of him, and she was going to attend remotely, we thought, well, Mary Jo won't be here. I won't be able to see her. But then he's really kind of dehydrated, so the doctors were a little worried. And so she's at the doctor's right now, hopefully getting good news or finding out what's wrong with him. So I'm doing this one all by myself. It's kind of scary, and that's appropriate because it's Halloween. And then last but not least, Leanne, our humble moderator, has retired. No, not retired. She still works here. She still is our logic person. If you've got documents that are being coded, Leanne's probably doing it, but she's not our humble moderator anymore. I know what you were thinking. She's not humble anymore. No, she's still humble. She's just not our humble moderator. But Patty, who is almost as humble as Leanne, you know, she's a mother of 8, so she can't be nearly as humble as Leanne can. Or maybe she should be. Maybe she should be more humble because she's just so wonderful, and we all know what a wonderful mother she is, that she needs to be humble. And so she is here to practice being humble as our humble moderator. So everybody, welcome, Patty. And I'm going to tell you that today we are talking about automating workflow. And we're going to do that with 2 topics. We're going to talk about calendar plans, which have been around forever. And we're going to talk about another way to automate calendar and pushing work through calendar-wise, task-wise, event-wise, using something called workflows. Okay? So we're going to look at how to make sure that when things get done, other things get done. And how, when this gets done, that gets scheduled. And when that gets done, the next thing gets scheduled. Or how, using calendar plans, we can schedule a whole bunch of things based on one single thing happening, like somebody dying, or a court date being scheduled, and all the things that need to be done before then. So we're going to look at that, calendar plans and workflows to automate calendar stuff. Without any further ado, I'm going to press just the right buttons, no more, no less, and I'm going to get into PracticeMaster. Now here I am, I'm in the client screen, so I'm looking at Michael Larson's ADA employment issue. And the first thing I want to talk about is calendar plans. Calendar plans are a way to set up dates and have them all generate at once based on a trigger date. Now, an easy way for me to explain that is if you're doing the probate of an estate, and the date that somebody dies is probably the trigger for a bunch of things. Now, I'm making these up. I'm not a lawyer. But let's say that the date that somebody dies, within 3 days you need to inform somebody, and within a week you need to file something with the probate court, and within a month you need to file the initial accounting, and within 6 months you need to do this and that. A calendar plan is a way to set that up all ahead of time, because those dates, those deadlines, and how they relate to the date of death don't change. They just get applied to different cases. It's a way to set those dates and their relationship to that trigger date, that initial date, and then later on be able to generate that calendar plan for each probate matter that comes into your firm. So when you get a new probate matter, you have all these deadlines. Maybe you've set 18 different deadlines up in relationship to the date of death. And you are going to now generate that calendar plan for that matter by specifying the date of death and specifying which client. And bam, all 18 of those things are scheduled at that point for that client. Insurance defense is another place where this comes into play. If you work for a bunch of different insurance companies, they all have different guidelines about things you must do in order to continue representing them. And so you want their business, so you do the things they say that they want you to do. And so a guideline from an insurance company might say, within a day you will acknowledge receipt of the case, and within 3 days you will make a telephone call to the insured, and within a week you will file an initial assessment, and within a month you will file a initial budget, and you'll file follow-up summaries and budgets every 90 days thereafter, and there may be a whole bunch of other dates. That's another example of a calendar plan. Now, the calendar plans I've talked about so far are going into the future, but calendar form plans can also go backwards from the target date. So if you schedule a trial, well, there are a whole bunch of things that need to be done before that trial. And so within 90 days of the trial, you need to have filed, again, I'm making this all up, you need to have filed a witness list. And within 60 days of the trial, you need to have filed an exhibit list. And within 20 days of the trial, you need to do this. And within 10 days of the trial, you need to do that. Another example of a backwards moving calendar plan is the statute of limitation date reminders. We all know that the statute date is the last date that you can file a claim, and therefore it's very important. And if you let that date pass and you haven't done what you're supposed to do, you're liable for malpractice in many instances. And so a lot of firms will want to set up reminders, many of them, for that statute date. And so you might have a calendar plan that generates those reminders. It's one way to do it. And when, for example, you might have a 1-day reminder, a 3-day reminder, a 1-week reminder, a 2-week reminder, a 1-month reminder, a 2-month reminder, and a 6-month reminder. And so if you set up a calendar plan with those negative moving reminders, in other words, pre-target date, when you generate it, you put in the statute of limitations date, and it automatically calculates all the reminders. So a lot of different things you can do with a calendar plan. Another example of the statute and its reminders is that it could be incorporated into a calendar plan that's based on the date of incident, because the statute, of course, is based on when the accident happened. And so if it's a 1-year statute, it can automatically schedule 365 days out for the statute date and then backwards for the reminders. All things that can be done with a calendar plan. So let's go look at that real quick. And then we're going to talk about other ways to automate workflow so that as things move through your firm, other things are scheduled. Because calendar plans don't always work for every instance, as you will see. So the first thing we got to understand is that calendar plans are right here. Now there's calendar plans. Those are calendar plans that have been generated for individual matters, individual cases. And there are calendar plan templates, which is where you go to make the definition. So I'm going to just go into, I'm just going to go and do a general calendar plan. And they can be done for specific areas of practice too. So if you've got different areas of practice like workers' comp or family law or probate, for my first example, you can set the calendar plans up just for those types of cases, or you can set them up in the system files and they will be able to be applied to any matter. So I'm going to create a standard system files type of template, and I'm going to call it VUG, because this is the virtual user group meeting. And I'm going to say that it's going to be for, we're going to use the probate example. And as I said, I'm going to make these things up. So the key item is the date of death. And, oh, I'm sorry. That was that's supposed to go over here. This is the probate template. Okay. And so I'm going to call it date of death. Now, in my example, I said within a day, let's say within a day you call, I'm making this stuff up, okay? You can figure out how it works and applies to your cases. I'm going to say within a day you need to call the mortician. Within 3 days you need to file some sort of form with the probate court. Within a week, you need to file initial accounting. I know that's probably a little bit too early. And within 6 months, you need to file a final accounting. I'm making these things up, but that's how we're going to set it up. So I'm going to add a dependent item. It's dependent on the date of death. And I'm going to say that within 1 day, we need to notify mortician. And within 3 days, we need to, 3 days of the date of death, we need to notify probate court. And within, let's make it 1 month. You'll notice I haven't actually filled this stuff in yet. We'll get to that in a second. We need to file initial accounting. And just for sake of simplicity, we'll add 1 more and no more than 1 more. So within 6 months, we need to file final accounting. Okay, so one of the things you should be realizing right now is that these have to be pretty hard and fast dates in relation to the trigger date, the key date. It doesn't make any sense. I went too far. It doesn't make any sense if these dates aren't really hard and fast against the trigger date. And in a minute, we're going to talk more about when that's not appropriate, what we can do differently. I think I said within 1 month, and within the final accounting, I believe I said was within 6 months. Okay. Now, if this is something that requires to be mailed, you can say, well, I need to allow, with my task deadline, I need to allow 3 days for it to be put in the mail. So that's what the mail interval is. And they can be mail days. In other words, if this were to fall on a Saturday and I needed to allow 3 days, well, for one thing, you can tell it that don't adjust it, but most people say adjust to the previous business day. So if this 6 months fell on a Saturday or a Sunday, it would be adjusted to the previous Friday based on the way I've set this. And then if I say I need 3 days to get it in the mail and have it delivered to the court, I would add 3 mail days for the mail interval. And that's how these dates get adjusted to allow for mail and for weekends, okay? Now, the thing is, not many people mail things to the court anymore, but there are other deadlines like that where you may be FedExing something to the client or mailing something to the client that may have mail interval days that you want to worry about. And you always have to worry about weekends. If something falls on a weekend, most firms, even if the court will allow you to file it on Monday, if it falls on a weekend, most firms want the deadline to be the previous business day, not the next business day. Now, so I now have a date of death, and within 1 day I notify the mortician. Within 3 days I notify the probate court. Within 1 month I file an initial accounting, and within 6 months I file the final accounting. Now I can have as many items as I want. And items can also be dependent on other things. Okay? A sibling item would be on the same level because it's a brother or sister of somebody who's already a son, a dependent item on the date of death. So a sibling item, adding a sibling item to this item here is the same as adding a dependent item to the date of death. But I can also add a dependent item to something that's already under the key date. So I can say that within 2 days of filing the final accounting, I need to call the court and make sure that they got it. Or I need to call the client and make sure that, you know, whatever. I can have things happen as dependents of dependents of dependents of dependents. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing out of here, and because I want this to be a simple one as I go ahead and generate it. So there I am. I've saved this as VUG probate. I've given it a description. I've given it a key date, which is the date of death. I've put in 4 dependent dates, all with information filled out over here. If I wanted to go in and edit the actual fields of the calendar item that would be created, I can do that here. So I can decide whether it's a task or an event. Most of these things are tasks. And I can decide on alarms and start times and who's going to be assigned if it's somebody other than who's assigned when the calendar plan is generated. Maybe when you generate this calendar plan, everything gets assigned to the primary attorney except the one thing that gets assigned to the certain paralegal, always to the same paralegal. So you can go in and edit the fields and add that person to the user group down here. You can put calendar codes in. You can change the description to be a little bit more in depth. You can put in comments to indicate how it relates to other dates. And here's what happens then. I'm going to go ahead and process the template. It's going to ask me first if I want to save it. And this is me taking this template and applying it to a certain matter. Now I'm going to apply it to Michael Larson's ADA case, even though that's not a probate case. We won't go there. And so for the plan name, you call it whatever you want. Michael Larson probate plan. Many of our clients will actually put the client number in here, which I don't know what the client number is, so we'll just pretend it's 130.00. So that later on, when you look at this plan, you can see what client it's for. That's entirely up to you. You tell it who to apply it to, and I said it was for Michael Larson's ADA case. The start date, that's the date of death. The start date is the trigger date. So let's say that Michael Larson died on the 4th of November in 2014. My demo system thinks we're on November 17, 2014. So he died a couple weeks ago, according to my demo data. And the user ID that should be assigned to all of these would be Ron, because he's who's handling the case. And I can also assign these calendar items to a contact, but a lot of my clients merely assign them to a case, so we're not going to go there. And this is what happens. It goes out and it says, okay, this is what I got. He died on this date. We're already late for this, okay? I wanted to point that out. We're already late for that. Remember, it thinks today's 11/17/14, so within a couple of weeks we have to file the initial counting, and then a little after that. These are the dates it came up with. And I can either accept or reject the plan as it has come up. Now I'm going to go ahead and reject it, because I want you to see that I can also process it with a more realistic date, like he died today. Because if I'm taking this case, I've probably found out today that he passed away, and within a day I've got to notify the mortician. Processes the template, and now comes up with dates like tomorrow, a couple days off, a month off, 6 months off. When I accept the plan, it goes out and creates calendar records that say that, hey, he died on this date, and then it has these deadlines up there. Okay. If we go to Michael Larson's case and look at the calendar tab, we will see scheduled for Ron, because I can also look at this by user, so I'm going to look at just Ron, that these things need to be done. We also have something that's in there that isn't related to this calendar plan, because what this has done is it's gone and generated these dates for this particular matter. Very cool. Been there for a long time. Been in the software for probably decades. A lot of people don't know this is there, and there are a lot of instances where this would be very helpful for people to be able to generate these dates automatically based on the date of the incident, based on the date of death, based on the court date or the trial date, based on the deposition date, a lot of different things that can have a whole bunch of other things scheduled based on one trigger date, and that's what calendar plans are for. Now, there are certain things that we don't really need to build calendar plans for, or where calendar plans don't work. But with, the version 16 or 15, I can't remember where they added workflows to PracticeMaster. But we can get really fancy, and so we're moving on to the other topic. This is where Mary Jo would say, that's calendar plans. Now to you, Paul. And so I'm going to talk about workflow in calendar definition. And so let's say that we want to, every time we prepare a fee agreement, we want to automatically schedule, I'm trying to remember how quickly I did this when I made this sample. 7 days. 7 days from that day to check and make sure we got that fee agreement back or to follow up on it. Okay. So here I've got a client that has a fee agreement that's due to be prepared and transmitted, and it's scheduled and it's set for Ron to do. And I'm Ron, and I'm working on this right now. And bam, I just sent this email to the client with their fee agreement all filled in, ready to go. I'm probably going to get it back today or tomorrow because the client's very anxious to get going. But just because I think the client is going to get it back to me doesn't mean they are. And I want to automatically have the system schedule my follow-up on that fee agreement. Now, this happens with lots of things. I mean, when you file in certain insurance companies, in their guidelines say every 90 days you're going to file an interim summary and budget. So that we can see where we are on the case and you can summarize what's going on. And so when I mark one complete, the next one should be done. Now I know what you're thinking. Why don't we use calendar plans? The date of the incident, within a month we've got to file the initial plan and budget, and then a summary budget and plan every 90 days after that. Why don't we just schedule a month out for the initial, 3 months out for the next one, 3 months out for the next one, 3 months out for the next one, 3 months out for the next one. A couple things wrong with that. How far do we go? What happens if we get done with all the ones we've scheduled and we still have to file more? How do we know to schedule more? If we're building a calendar plan, it's a finite number of entries that are built based on that initial date. Okay? So most cases don't last longer than 2 years. Make it 2 years. What if the case goes beyond 2 years? Are we just going to all of a sudden forget to send the summary and budget follow-up that's required 90 days into that third year? What if the case settles in 90 days? What do we do with all those extra entries? Do we want to continue to be reminded of that? No, we don't. So what do? We build workflow. We build workflow that's dependent on something being done. When something gets done, we schedule the next thing. Here's another reason calendar plans don't work for that. Let's say that it's supposed to be every 90 days, but it's 90 days from the date the last one was done. So we've got somebody who's going on vacation, so they're not going to do it on the 90th day. They're going to do it 2 weeks early. If we had scheduled every 90 days and somebody does something 2 weeks early, then the next one's due 2 weeks early as well. And if it isn't adjusted, if somebody forgets to adjust that date, then all of a sudden the next one's going to be 2 weeks late. Now, that may not be a drop-dead deadline, but if it is, you're in trouble. So instead what we do is we build workflow that is based on one thing being marked complete before it generates the next. So when I fill in that I completed this today, and I can either fill in the date and save the record, and I'm doing that for illustrative purposes to show you what's going on, but I could just as easily have checked off the little box that says this is complete, or use the mark as completed over here. Whenever I fill in this date with a date that it was completed, watch what happens. It goes out and automatically schedules a week from today to confirm receipt of fee agreement for, oh, I forgot to put the client ID in. I built this a couple minutes ago, so it would be for that same client, okay? That's workflow. Workflow can be triggered by anything happening. So I build it so that when I check off something or complete something that has a calendar code of PFA, which is Prepare Fee Agreement, it automatically schedules confirming the receipt of the fee agreement, which happens to be CFA. And then I could have other workflow that schedules the next step after I confirm receipt of the fee agreement. When I fill that in and mark that as complete, then we can schedule the initial teleconference with the client. And after the initial teleconference has been scheduled, then we could maybe generate a calendar plan and do a whole bunch of stuff based on that date. A lot of stuff can happen. But the point is, calendar plans are static, and workflow, as we're looking at here, is dynamic. I'm not going to get into a bunch of theory about all the different things we could do with workflow, because I think that's up to you to kind of let this percolate in your mind. But I will take you in very quickly to show you how that works. I have this workflow in here. It's called Fee Agreement Sent, and it looks like this. It says for every record that's changed in the calendar file, because workflows are specific to whatever file you're in, where a specific field called completed date was blank before, it doesn't matter what it's changed to, but as long as it was blank before and it was changed, and the calendar code equals PFA, we want to create a new record, and that new record is for the date it was completed plus 14 days. You can see that right there, with a calendar code of CFA, and I should have pumped the client number in here. I'm going to let that sink in. Some of you out there are kind of nerdy like me, and you're percolating right now. But that's what we're doing. We're saying when something happened, when a record in the calendar file is changed in such a way that the completed date used to be blank and now it's not, meaning it has been completed, and a certain calendar code is in place, meaning it was the one for prepare a fee agreement, now we have to confirm that we received it. We want to create a new calendar record for the same person for 14 days from the date it was completed to do the next thing. And that's dynamic workflow. So 2 different ways to automate the workflow in your firm. And what we're doing here is we're capturing knowledge. Think about it. If you get a new employee, every new employee you get, every legal assistant, every paralegal, every attorney for that matter, you have to tell them, well, we do this, and when we're done with this, we do that, and when we're done with that, we wait 14 days and we do that. Wouldn't it be easier to build workflow that does that for them? And that's what we're doing with the combination of calendar plans and calendar-oriented workflow. Workflows, by the way, can be done on any file and on virtually any trigger. So workflows go way beyond what I'm showing you here, but this is an example of using workflow in the calendar file specifically to move a case through your firm. Patty is patiently waiting to ask a question on behalf of someone.
Actually, Sharon has a question for you, Paul.
Okay.
Sharon, you can go ahead.
Sharon, are you there? Yeah, you just unmute. Okay. It's possible that Sharon didn't mean to raise her hand, so let's go ahead and put it back down and mute her back up. And then she can raise her hand again if she still has that question, or maybe she can type the question. Perhaps Sharon got stage fright at the very end there and said, I really wanted to ask this question of Mary Jo, and she's not there. Okay, so that's that. That is how we automate workflow, automate the calendar using workflow and calendar plans. Remember, calendar plans are static, and workflow is dynamic. Do we have her back, Patty?
Actually, she typed her question.
Okay.
And she did not see how to get into workflow. Can
okay.
you show that again,
Yes,
please?
I can. So workflow, as I said, is specific to the file you're in. So if I'm in a list of calendar items, which I am now, over under quick clicks, which may or may not be exposed to, they may be kind of hidden, see like that, where you only get them when you hover, or they may be pinned open, but maybe workflow is compressed. But nonetheless, under workflow, there will be a manage workflows, and that's how you get in there. And then if you right click, you can add a new one, or if you find the one you want to edit, which may be hidden under a tree like this one, you can either double click or right click and choose edit. So you get to wherever you want to write workflow. I wanted to write workflow for the calendar file. So I got to a place where I was listing calendar items and went into manage workflows. If I instead had been in the client list and I went into manage workflows, I am now looking at workflows specific to the client file, as opposed to having been over here on the calendar tab and gone into manage workflows when I am then in workflows for the calendar file. Remember, workflows are very specific to the type of file that you're in. There are calendar workflows, there could be client workflows, there could be document workflows for document records if you're using PracticeMaster for document management. Okay. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to show you that if you go to Attorney Computer Systems with an emphasis on the S at the end of systems.com, you will be able, among other things, to hover over the videos heading and see all the different videos we have. 4 of them are for live events. We have kind of a catch-all, but these are the 3 virtual user group meetings that we have: tabs, PracticeMaster, and World Docs, and our Coffee Pot webinars. Obviously, the VUGs, the virtual user group meetings, are for each of the products that we work with. And then our Coffee Pot webinars are a live event that I do every month, usually focusing on some sort of an add-on product. Last month it was Symphony Profiler for World Docs, and the month before it was Symphony OCR for World Docs and PracticeMaster. If we click on PracticeMaster Virtual User Group Meetings, we'll see that the next month's meeting is highlighted, except in instances where we are actually in that meeting. Then you'll see the one we're in. And so in a few minutes, an hour or so, Patty will change this, and it'll represent what we're going to talk about next month, which I'll tell you right now is adding an AOP, adding an area of practice to PracticeMaster, and billing for emails, creating billing entries from Outlook for the emails that you have sent right from your Outlook inbox. And so you'll see a description of what's going on. You'll see links to register for that next live event. And then as you scroll down, you will find recorded versions of all the past, in this instance, PracticeMaster virtual user group meetings that we've ever had. And so it goes on for pages and pages, and you could spend your whole night watching videos of me and Mary Jo, and people have done that before. But if you want to zero in on something, you can also just type whatever it is you're looking for, get a quick list, or hit enter and get a more expanded list of videos that contain that word in your description. And without seeming a little weird, which most people already know that I am, I do want to point out that we now fully represent all the products that we sell right here on the back of my car. So if you happen to see a car with Michigan plates that say either Tabs 3, World Docs, or PR Master, which is short for PracticeMaster, honk and wave, because it'll either be me or my wife. Now I will say, if it's World Docs, don't pull her over and try and ask her a question. She has trouble getting her voicemail off her iPhone. Everybody have a good rest of the week, a good rest of the day, and certainly a good rest of the month, because today is the last day of October and it's Halloween. And we will see you next month at the PracticeMaster Virtual User Group meeting. Thanks much. Bye-bye.